Welcome to Capitol Dialogue. I'm Bob Priddy with the Missourinet and the Missouri Channel. We're glad to have you with us. The legislative session of 2014 has come to an end. The House chamber behind us is now quiet. But just a few days ago, it was filled with passion, heat, debate, arguments, and decisions that are important to every citizen of the state of Missouri. Our guest on this program is the Speaker of the House, Tim Jones. It's not often that we've had speakers of the House on our show with us, so we're glad to have you here. And you have, I guess you're pretty much done as Speaker now, except for a few ceremonial things later in the year.
Perhaps. We'll see if we have a special session or an active veto session this year.
Well, that will be some things we want to talk about.
Yes.
But tell me a little bit about a career as Speaker. Looking back over these 2 years, they've been pretty tumultuous, active years.
You know, we probably say that about every speakership because there's always excitement, there's always passionate debate, there's always big issues and challenges to tackle. But I think this year we saw the conclusion of a very significant substantive session. Many major priorities made it across the finish line.
Let's talk about the top priorities as you see them. Give me a list of maybe the 5 most important things you think happened in this legislative session.
Well, the income tax reform and reduction was historical in the sense that it's the first time we've reduced and reformed the state income tax in nearly 100 years, and we did it by overriding the governor's veto. So that was a dramatic step, I believe, towards some significant economic development in the state. We also did a major completion of a major project for Fulton Mental Health Hospital. That has been something that's embattled this legislature for not just years but decades. That's a project that was well overdue. I'm very proud of the fact this legislature came together to complete that. There was a significant infrastructure bill that Representative Chris Kelly and I worked on that he called the most significant jobs bill that he's seen in his entire tenure, which is saying something because he's been here a couple different times over the last few decades. And that was a historical bill as well. The budget is our one constitutional substantive duty, and I think it's easier said than done on that. We passed a significant budget with a historical increase for education. I believe it was around $200 million or more for education this year, so significant priority placed in that arena. And it was a great year for the children of this state. There was a significant school transfer bill that passed through, and I was speaking to one of our child advocates just yesterday, and she said there was some major funding items in the budget. There was just a lot of good things for Missouri kids this year as well, so a good year.
You talked about the override of the governor's veto on the tax bill, the income tax reform bill. And it's been portrayed not only over in this chamber, the House of Representatives, but in the Senate as a key to economic development. Tell me how this works and how long is it going to take for the state to get back through economic development the amount of money it is going to give back to the citizens because of the tax cut?
Well, the great beauty about this bill is not a single dollar is going to come out of the current record high state budget of $27+ billion because this is truly it's a revenue accelerator bill. So what I mean by that is no revenue will go back in the form of a tax cut to the taxpayers until additional revenue comes in first. So the state budget will never lose any revenue. What I think that this bill will do is it will work in conjunction with the other states around us that are pursuing similar measures and will put Missouri in that competitive stream. Many of our other states are reducing taxes. 6 of our 8 bordering states are right-to-work states. Many of our states are reforming their litigation systems and their regulatory burdens. If Missouri is not competitive in all of those arenas, then we will lag behind. And that's true currently because Missouri ranks 47th in GDP growth in the nation. So I think a historic tax cut like this is a signal to business owners in Missouri and outside of Missouri that Missouri is open for business. And so as additional revenue comes in, taxpayer money will go back to small businesses and Missouri workers.
So it's your thought that the tax cut has a lot of ripples. We talk about the tax cut itself, but there's a lot of related things that we'll feel come out from it.
Yes, economics is always a ripple effect, and you have to incentivize in order to see growth. And I think this bill will be a huge incentive to growth.
The legislature and the governor collided on several things, including this bill this year, but it seemed like the Fulton State Hospital was something everybody agreed on. It was just making the right agreement to go in the right direction. How hard was it to actually figure out how you want to go about funding a new state hospital in Fulton?
Well, we made the process easier by working with our Senate colleagues. The governor's plan was something we reviewed, but we decided to go with the joint House-Senate plan, which actually will complete the project in a much faster period of time. It will incur much less debt for the state and for taxpayers, and we'll get the project done within about 3 years with a debt payoff of only 5 years. So that's really a monumental accomplishment, and is something that, like I said, is long overdue.
It's long overdue. It's a major institution, but at the same time, I'm sure there's a lot of Missourians who don't really feel touched by this issue. How important is it to the whole state of Missouri?
This is an institution that is available to anyone in the state who needs its services, and it has provided it has been a vital component of the mental health community in our entire state. So as we reach out to our most vulnerable citizens, we should have the right facilities and services for them. Rebuilding Fulton Mental Health into a state-of-the-art facility was long overdue and will be a resource available to every Missourian who's in need.
Now that's the gem of the infrastructure proposal. There's a lot of other things you folks took care of this year in terms of funding for other infrastructure projects that have been neglected for a long, long time. Let's run through those and talk about how important it was that you move in that direction with them.
You know, there was, I don't have the laundry list with me, but it was an important list, as you mentioned. And it was a list that Representative Chris Kelly and I worked on collaboratively for about 3 to 4 years. It will create immediate construction jobs, and then it will create long-term employment opportunities as well for all Missourians in areas of education, in areas of health care, in areas of economic development.
School transfer bill was something that was high on the list at the beginning of the year. You got the bill through. The governor has some reservations about it. But is that an important bill just for St. Louis and Kansas City, or does that have tentacles that reach throughout Missouri?
Our public education system affects every student in the state who attends public schools. And we have to stop thinking that every school district is an island and that they only have to worry about themselves. We need to worry about the state of education for the entire state of Missouri, for every child. And I was very proud to join with my colleagues in the Senate, the 3 ladies who led the charge over there, Senators Maria Chappelle-Nadal, Jamila Nasheed, and Kiki Curls, whose Senate districts are some of the most impacted by our failing schools in Missouri. They see it firsthand. They see the circle of failure. They want to create a circle of success. They want to rebuild their neighborhoods. And the important part of that is to have competitive schools that do an excellent job. And this is the first significant key. This is the first time we've gotten a bill like this through the legislature ever that provides some degree of hope, opportunity, and choice for parents.
Tendency is to think of this as a metropolitan area problem, St. Louis and Kansas City. But we have several schools in outstate Missouri that are teetering on the verge of being unaccredited and facing some of these same issues. Is this also something that could have a major impact to the people in rural Missouri too?
I think it could be a viable and helpful use to them. I hope those schools are able to turn things around, but you're correct. If you speak to our rural legislators, they will tell you that the issues of education, the challenges in education, do not just affect the urban and suburban areas, but there are some rural schools that are challenged as well. And so I think we've provided a good toolbox of available resources for every school district in the state, so every child has access to a great education, which was a priority of mine these last 2 years.
But you know from being around here that those of us in the press like to talk about the things you don't do.
Correct.
Right? And so there's a couple of things that didn't happen this year. One was, once again, no tax credit reform to speak of. Is this something the legislature is just going to talk about forever?
I would say the House continually shows that this is a chief priority for us. We passed out a major economic development bill that included huge amounts of tax credit reform very, very early in the session. I think it went out of this chamber in February or early March. Gave the Senate plenty of opportunity. I think there's a couple people in the General Assembly that are always moving the dial around on that issue and never seem to be satisfied with any proposal. So perhaps in the years to come, when there's other hands at the table and other minds being brought to bear, there can be a good compromise. But the House has passed out, in my time, numerous bills that have lowered the caps on some of the biggest drivers, eliminated 20 to 30 tax credit programs, substantial savings of over $100 million every year. So the House continues, I think, to lead on this. We welcome our Senate partners to join us.
And the other issue that was big at the start that the House acted on and the Senate did not was Medicaid reform and expansion this year. You folks moved some bills on that.
Well, we said that reform has to be the chief priority, and there were several bills that moved through courtesy of some of our legislators on both sides of the aisle that worked on the issue. I think the problem with Medicaid expansion is that we're seeing states that have done that now that are now having fiscal challenges. There was a major write-up this week in one of our major national papers that talked about how states are now having to come to grips with this Medicaid expansion because of Obamacare's effects on that. So I think we were cautious and wise in having a debate on the issue, talking about reform. The fact that an expansion bill did not pass I think actually I'm glad we did not pass a straight expansion bill. There has to be reform to this system. Every healthcare provider tells you that.
So there's unfinished work to be done in the General Assembly. We'll leave that for 2015 and the next round of leadership in the legislature. Tim Jones has served as Speaker of the House for 2 years. We're glad you've been on the program with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll see you next time on Capitol Dialogue.